right. New microphone. New me. Here we go. Welcome back to Get This Game, where we're all about the board gamey goodness. And let's talk about the elephant in the room. I haven't been here for a while. I think that I've been really taking the last month or so and focusing a lot more on playing games rather than just talking about games. So I haven't been able to create as much video content as I want to, but I'm really excited that I did take this approach because I played a ton more games in August that I'm really excited to talk about, which is why we're here. We're going to talk about my top 10 favorite games that I played in August. If you're returning, welcome back. If you're new here, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'm going to really try and post a lot more often. You can also follow me on TikTok and Instagram at GetThisGame and at GetThisBoardGame, respectfully. Hit the notification button, leave a comment about some of the games that you played in August that you had a really fun time with, because I've been really keeping the ball rolling and I want to continue just playing more games and exposing myself to as many as I could. That sounded gross a bit. Let's just get into the list. Number 10 is going to be Deep Rock Galactic. Now, this was also on my top games from the month of June. I actually haven't played it since then, so it's still very fresh and new and exciting for me to get this game back to the table, second time playing. This is a game where you are basically working cooperatively as space dwarves. You are going to a foreign planet and you are landing to mine and collect all of the precious resources on the planet. And along the way, all of the bugs that are inhabiting it really don't like you encroaching on their territory. They want you dead, and so you have to fight them off. And they're all really like gross and varied and disgusting. My friend who brought the game has the upgraded kind of deluxe version where all the miniatures of the bugs look really cool and awesome. This is a game that I really appreciate, again, for its streamlined, very straightforward system, which is not something that a lot of dungeon crawlers can kind of hang their hat on. Sometimes when you play Dungeon Crawler, it gets super bogged down with all these rules for combat, movement, special cases. Deep Rock has a really straightforward weapon system, a really straightforward movement system, and also a very streamlined way that enemies will either move or attack you. All of that really lets you kind of shut off your brain to all of the fiddly rules and just focus on doing the mission and achieving your goal. Now, with that said, having played it now a couple times, having played a number of different scenarios with different people, I would say this game errs on the side of being maybe a little bit too easy. If you're playing this game, I would say after you've played the intro, especially if you're a kind of newer or more experienced player rather, after you've played the intro, maybe one other scenario, feel free to try a harder mission and just ramp the difficulty up. There are a couple ways that you're going to do that. You get rid of some of the easier encounter cards in the game, I'm pretty sure, as well as you get to really tick up the kind of game clock and get closer to the end game that much faster, and you encounter more enemies along the way doing that too. If you're an experienced gamer that is interested in trying this one out, definitely err on the side of ramping up that difficulty sooner rather than later. I think you're going to have a more enjoyable time overall. I liked it still. I did find near, especially in that second game where everyone around the table had really gotten down all the different mechanics and how everything works, we really kind of flew by and flew past the scenario really, really quickly. Probably a little bit easier than we would have wanted to. But number 10, Deep Rock Galactic, still a solid option. Just make that a little bit harder the next time you play. At number 9, it continues to be an absolute banger, especially in this household. This is Sky Team. As a reminder, again, you are basically going to be working with one other person. You will be a pilot and co-pilot using dice to manipulate certain actions that simulate landing a plane. You have to do things like get the landing gear ready, get your brakes ready, clear all of the planes that are kind of in your way as you approach the runway. This is a super cool kind of limited communication game. The perfect, in my mind, game for couples who like to play board games in this time period. I play a lot with my fiance. We really, really like it. It's just the perfect kind of after work game where we want to say, okay, we want to try the latest scenario that we are trying to beat. Just a solid game top to bottom that we have now played consistently month after month after month. It has not gotten old. In fact, now we're getting into some of the really challenging scenarios where things are getting harder. Little modules are thrown in throughout. All of it just kind of comes together in this thing that makes it feel really fresh and new every time you play. It just adds those little extra tasks or difficulty settings that we really appreciate. So by no means has the game gotten old despite how much we've played it so far. We're still not through the entire game, so still plenty more to play. But Sky Team, just honestly, there's a reason why it won the Spiel des Jahres this year. Despite being maybe not a family game, being a two-person only game, I think that really speaks to just how solid the design is here. Some of my favorite things about it, again, if you haven't played the game yet, again, you are going to be secretly rolling 4 die, and those die are going to basically open up certain actions for you. Some die you have to put a certain value on, so there are certain spots on the board where you can only place a 4 or a 5. There are also spots on the board that only one person could play versus the other. There are pilot spaces. There are separate co-pilot spaces. And then you have to also work with your team and kind of feed off of what your partner is doing and react to it to make sure that you're not doing things like having the plane tilt too far one direction versus the other, or have it come in too hot towards the runway and then you fly past the airplane and or the airport and you lose the mission. So much to like about this game. Absolute banger of a game for couples who do like the hobby and are kind of into it more. I wouldn't call this necessarily a gateway couples game, but if you are kind of board game curious and you don't mind sitting down for something that has a little bit more complexity to it, Sky Team I can't suggest enough for couples. Number 8 is going to be Codenames, which I don't actually have here because my grandparents just borrowed it to take it up to the cottage. Codenames, I don't think I have to say too much. If you've watched this far into the video, you know board games and you know exactly what Codenames is and the staying power that it has. It is a word game where you are in 2 teams. You have a clue giver giving out clues by using one word to describe as many of the words on the board as they can. The red team will have a certain number of words. The blue team will have a certain number of words out on the board. And they are trying to make connections to certain words for their team by giving those clues and then describing how many cards out on the board those apply to. This one is so good, and I'm only bringing it up because at the start of the month, I had my cottage going away annual trip with my family, extended family on my mom's side. We have played Codenames at this cottage weekend, I think like for the last 4 or 5 or maybe even 6 years. This dates way back. It was really cool to see my grandparents get a little bit more involved this time. Usually we are totally down to play card games and they're down to try out more party games. This one has like just the tiniest little bit more complexity to it, so I wasn't sure how it was going to go over with them, but their eyes light up and they get so into a game like this. And when you have somebody who maybe is the least likely to enjoy your game at the table having a good time, you've got a winner, which is again why they took the game and now completely take it away to play it themselves. So just in general, Codenames does such a good job of creating moments and memories around the table. We had some laughs and definitely some running jokes that are now going to continue carrying over. So Codenames is just like the perfect family situation. Certainly other games that are a little bit more complex that I certainly played this month that I'm just more into, but I have to acknowledge just how much fun I had playing with people that I love. A game that just is just so good and consistent throughout. That's Codenames. Number 7 is kind of the latest hotness relatively in the board gaming world. I got to play Dune Imperium Uprising for the first time. Dune Imperium is a worker placement combined with deck building system modeled after the world of Dune and the recent series of movies and book that came out a long time ago. And here you are taking control of kind of one of the factions in the Dune universe, trying to gain power, just basically in both military and politically as well, as you use your workers to go to different spots. Sometimes you're collecting resources, sometimes you are trying to get kind of like a seat at the High Council to make yourself and status more powerful to get money. You might also be putting them on the different tracks of the different factions to gain their favor and kind of build that trust to gain bonus benefits and of course points. Now, Dune Imperium Uprising has a couple things added to it. If you're familiar with the base game, that you will pick up pretty quickly. There's the introduction of spies, which basically are little tokens that you can place out on certain spots on the board that are connected to multiple other worker placement spots. It basically allows you a little bit of flexibility that if someone else has taken a worker spot that you really want to go to, you can use your spy to actually go there yourself. And you can also use it to mitigate and get around a certain spot if you don't have the right combination of resources or cards in your hand to be able to go there. The other thing that it adds that I was a really big fan of are contracts. So these are just extra little tasks or mini games that you can pick up that basically say, hey, if you visit this location and have, for example, this many of a certain resource, here's a little benefit that you get. And you're going to different spaces, kind of fulfilling these contracts to get added bonuses. I really like that aspect of the game. When I played it at one of my local game nights. The thing that was a little bit polarizing, I think, for everyone around the table was the sandworms. The sandworms, you are able to get and add to the combat mix at the end of every round. And basically, the sandworms themselves are worth more power than any of the other kind of troops that you can have combined. And what they also do is if you win your fight or come in a certain place, you get to double the benefit of all of your winnings for that round. That is absolutely insane, and I definitely took advantage of it. As anyone knows who's played Dune Imperium, you're playing to 10 points, and that feels like nothing, but it really is hard to kind of slog your way and get to those 10 points. They are not kind of kind, and they're very slow to offer up victory points in this game. Despite that, in Dune Imperium Uprising, because of those sandworms, I was able to get 4 points in one single turn or round, which is unheard of all the other times I've played Dune Imperium. So I think that was a little bit polarizing for everyone. You do have to go through a certain sequence of moves and worker placement spots to be able to get access to your sandworms. And one of the guys I played with made a really good point, in my opinion, in saying that it kind of really sets everyone up to do the exact same kind of series of moves to start. There's a very obvious path because the sandworms are so powerful, and because everyone kind of has to take that path, it's pretty predictable what everyone is going to kind of do to start the game. And in your games, you kind of want that ability to kind of take different strategies, take different approaches. But when it's so obvious that you need to get a sandworm as soon as you can, I guess I can see where that kind of can take away a little bit from the overall Dune Imperium experience. I did agree with him. I'm also someone who hasn't played a ton of Dune Imperium in general, so I don't know that I'm necessarily the one to judge whether Uprising is better than the original Dune Imperium at this stage, but I had a really good time with it. It took me a little bit to get back up and running with the game. We got the kind of quick version of the teach because I had said I'd played before. It took me a while to get back in the groove. I ended up coming in second, which is fine, but it did make me resolve to kind of want to play Dune more for sure. Next up's an oldie, and depending on who you ask, it's a goodie. It was Terraforming Mars. So the story here is my buddy, who I've grown up with a very long time. We've kind of separated and grown apart a little bit, but more recently we've been able to kind of get back together and hang out more. He is really into board games, but he does not have as many people in his life as I do to be able to play them with. So he has actually had his copy of Terraforming Mars unopened for years and years and years. And we were over the other night kind of hanging out with him playing some lighter games. And I told him, I'm like, okay, we're going to find a date. We're going to sit down and we're going to commit to playing with it. And this past month, we actually were. It was a really cool experience to see someone discover Terraforming Mars and have an appreciation for it like so many of us did, maybe when the game first came out. But it was really awesome and rewarding to see us play through this game and have him just kind of glow and smile and love it at the end. And just being able to see him kind of close that loop on a game that he's been wanting to play for so long, being able to have it finally get out was really rewarding. Terraforming Mars there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. It's a tableau builder. Essentially, it is a symbol collector. You are basically all companies working towards making Mars inhabitable, right? So you are going to be increasing the oxygen level of the planet. You'll be increasing the temperature of it. You're going to be adding water tiles so it's inhabitable and plants can grow. All of these kind of elements and things come together through card play. You're going to be collecting resources, playing cards that kind of drive your engine to make more resources, and that cycle continues until you get to be this beastly powerful entity. It's a really good one. I think in my world, animals trump space. And so with that in mind, Ark Nova, which is a game where it is similar. You're playing a tableau of cards using different combinations of symbols to be successful and get points. I think Ark Nova still wins out for me in terms of the game that I would prefer or gravitate to. That might be a hot take. Let me know in the comments if you think that's a hot take. Feel free to dump all over me on that one. But Terraforming Mars is one that kind of started it all and started that process of being able to be like, think of how many combinations you can do with this fat stack of cards if you really put time into the design. So Terraforming Mars, great. The experience of playing it with someone who had never played it before but really wanted to, even better. At number 5, another old game that I'm really embarrassed I have not gotten to the table and just committed to playing until now, and that's going to be I Love Cats. This game is so good. As a cat lover and as a board game lover, these two worlds collided for me and made a very good first impression. So much so that after I played it in person at my game group, I went home and started like a ton of board game arena games. And I suck at it, but that's okay. I'm going to keep practicing and getting better. The theme is really weird. The best way I can describe it is you're trying to rescue cats from this island by putting them on your boat before a bad guy comes in and does something to them. I'm not entirely sure. It doesn't really matter though. It's a polyomino game where you're playing cards out to add cats, draft them to your board, trying to cover up as much space as you can. I was fascinated in just how cool the cards interact with polyomino shapes and polyomino tile laying here. Something I haven't frankly played a lot of games where those two worlds combine and come together. The cards are really going to dictate a lot of things. They are going to represent different ways you can score endgame points, which are super important. Those are the lesson cards. They're also going to dictate exactly how many cats you're able to rescue at any given time, because many of them will have a certain number of basket symbols on them. You can combine half baskets to make full ones to rescue a cat. You can also play ones down that give you a permanent basket that make you able to rescue even more cats on future rounds. The polyomino placement here is also really good. They did a great job of having so many different sized and shaped of cats to manipulate and put on your board. And you're trying to do a few different things. Each time you fill an entire room on your board, you're going to get some fewer minus points at the end of the game, rather. And then you're also going to be trying to cover up different treasure token tiles that also grant you some other benefits if you put the right cat over the right symbol. I really enjoyed it. Again, that's obviously really obvious, but I think just what came together here for me was all of the card play and trying to figure out that drafting piece and knowing, okay, some turns I really have to go all in on cats, which means I have to be ready with some baskets. Or, oh, this time I can hang back a little bit, maybe put some smaller tiles out, but I really want to focus on keeping a lot of these lesson cards and these endgame scoring cards because they work really well with how I've set up my board. I did some really cool, interesting things with some of the extra treasure tokens that you can put out and being able to give myself some flexibility on where I was placing out on the board. Just a really cool, interesting game that I really haven't seen, again, combine that card play with that polyomino puzzle thing, which I'm a really big fan of. So Isle of Cats, if you don't know, now you know, but you should know because it took me forever and I feel late to the game. Number 4, I do have here, and it was a game that was provided me by Flat River Group and Greater Than Games. This is Sentinels of the Multiverse. I was given the definitive edition, so thank you very much, the team at Greater Than Games, for sending it through. Here, you are basically a set of superheroes working together to defeat a very big bad. If you look at the cover, you'll notice that you've never seen these heroes before. They are not licensed by Marvel. They are not licensed by DC. This is an entire world of superheroes and villains and environments and locations that the designers of the game have kind of built and created up. And so what comes out of that on the other side is this really cool discoverability factor where you are essentially now working with an entire new cast of heroes that you have no idea what they do. If you're playing a game like Marvel Champions or Legendary, you can kind of get an idea of what Iron Man's going to do. You kind of get an idea of what Captain America or Hulk or Spider-Man are going to do. Here, I think the best part of it for me throughout the process of playing a ton of games of this solo is that it really offers you the chance to look at a hero, see, oh, he looks really cool. What does he do? I have no idea. Let's play a game and find out. Oh, okay, he does that and this hero does that. Let's see how I can play them together and combine them to see what happens and how effective they are together. The flow of the game is essentially you let the villain do their attacks. They're usually going to have a combination of henchmen and ongoing abilities that are going to do bad stuff to you. And then on your turn, you have a hand of cards, an entire deck that is unique to your character and your hero, and you're going to play a card. And then after playing that card, you're hoping to kind of build up a tableau of cascading effects that work towards your hero's strengths and also support everybody else around the table as you're all working together to just punch the bad guy in the face. Now, I saw a lot of comparisons for me here with games like Legendary, which I mentioned, and Marvel Champions, which I mentioned, especially Marvel Champions. Really, the only difference in terms of the gameplay and the setup, despite besides some kind of minor resource tweaks, is the fact that you are starting with a set deck of cards in Sentinels versus crafting your own deck in Marvel Champions. And I gotta say, between the fact that I get to discover these new heroes and I'm working with an entirely new set and cast of characters to explore and see how they interact with one another, combined with the fact that I don't have to feel the need to buy every single hero pack and scenario pack and have all of the cards together to actually be able to play the game, I have a feeling that as of right now, Sentinels of the Multiverse is probably going to have a little bit of the edge for me over a game like Marvel Champions. I've seen the criticism about this game that it kind of plays itself, and I don't necessarily disagree, but it's not to the point where you're only playing one card at a time and then everyone else does the same. You see what happens and see how it plays out. You can be smart with when you're doing certain actions, when you're leveraging certain abilities versus when you're holding back and saving them for later. I think there is a little bit of that. It certainly has more decision space going on than something like Marvel Legendary, where the entire game really is based around what cards you're drafting, and then you're just kind of playing your hand. So Sentinels, as of right now, I think it does get the edge for me over Marvel Champions. Obviously, the flexibility of having an entire living card game that is constantly cranking out new content, plus the fact that it's Marvel and I am a Marvel fan, that kind of helps counteract it. But Sentinels really impressed me so far, and you can expect more on the channel and on my TikTok to hear more about my full thoughts about Sentinels of the Multiverse. We are into the top 3, so if you've seen my TikTok about this, you might get a spoiler alert, but I am looking forward to kind of talking a little bit more in depth. Number 3 is going to be Wormspan, another game that I played for the first time this month. If you are a fan of Wingspan, then you will know the general idea of how this game works. You have 3 rows of different habitats where you can house dragon cards. Each of those dragons have a special ability attached to them that might be a one-time ability. They might trigger when you send your cave or explorer to kind of traverse through and trigger all of the abilities in one row of your habitat. And ultimately, you are trying to just put together a mishmash of different points to get the most points at the end of the game. I'm of the mind and I'm of the camp that birds are still better than dragons in this case. I think the art's a little bit cleaner. The art style in Wormspan, just not for me as much as it is all the different kind of Wingspan art that is out there. There was, with that being said, a lot that I liked about this game that I think give it an edge over Wingspan for me. I think I could treat both separately. I would be okay with playing both at any given time. Like I would probably flip-flop. It's not like one trumps the other completely, but there are some things that were added to Wormspan that I think give it the edge again over something like Wingspan. There is this guild track, basically, that you are going to be able to kind of go through a bit of a race process. You're going to be able to, at certain points of the game, move your guild track across to the different locations around the edge of this board, and you're going to get benefits along the way. But what you're really doing is racing to the halfway mark of each side of the board. When you do that, you're going to get to take one of your cubes and just be able to put it over an action that is really, really powerful. I did a really good job of, I think, prioritizing getting some of those spots, and it really helped me out in my game. Another thing that I like in this game is actions are almost more of a currency than just a set level in Wormspan. In Wingspan, it is you feel really powerful at the start of the game because you get so many cubes and you get to do so many things. But by the final round, you have been losing those action cubes and you get to be a lot more stronger at the end of the game, but you also get to do fewer things with it. Wormspan takes all of that away and gives you action tokens. You start with a certain number at the start of your turn, but there are opportunities throughout previous rounds and new rounds to gain more action tokens, letting you do more stuff all at once. And I freaking love that. It's so awesome. I mean, we did play this at 5 players, and if I had one complaint about the game, as with many Stonemaier games, they try to make it fit 5 players when really they probably should limit it to 4. It was a very long game at the full 5-player count, especially with a bunch of us having never played the game before. But part of that was because we had so many actions to be able to pool and grow, which cascaded into us getting to do more fun, cool stuff, which is why we're there to play board games in the first place. So there were a couple things there with Wormspan that I really enjoyed and had a good time with. Would definitely say yes to playing it again. I don't know that I need to own it necessarily. I think having Wingspan and just having that theme once again be a little bit more resonant with me, I think that makes it edge out, but I will never say no, as far as I know right now, to playing another game of Wormspan. Number 2 is another game that was sent to me for review. This was from Office Dog in Asmodee, Canada, so thank you to them for sending River of Gold for review. Super cool and visually appealing game. This has one of the best productions I've seen from games that have come out this year, quite frankly. Here you are merchants flowing down and going and traveling down a river of gold. You are basically trying to collect points, which are going to come in the form of basically buying buildings along the shoreline of the river to get benefits every time somebody visits it. You can also move your boat to visit those different buildings and collect some benefits of your own, all the while trying to basically make deliveries to different customers who are requiring different needs, either rice or porcelain or I believe it is silk. And then you're also along the way going to be building up your reputation and your kind of influence in the different regions of the map as well. Now, the thing about River of Gold is that I don't know that it has anything in this game that is necessarily revolutionary or new. It has, again, that influence track where you're moving up influence across different regions in a kind of area majority sort of exercise. That's not anything new. A lot of other games have that. Adding down buildings that grant you benefits when other people visit them, that's not necessarily something that is new. You have basically all of your actions are going to be influenced by the roll of a die. The die indicates what locations you can build in, where along the track you can move, how many spaces, but you do have the opportunity to manipulate that die to make it a little bit more flexible for what you can do. All of this stuff is already present in a ton of other games, and yet I don't really care, because just all of the working pieces that come together in River of Gold, combined with the fact that it does look beautiful and it has some really luxe and quality components, it just makes the game sing for me. I was really pleased with my experience with this one. I've only played it one time, so I'm not quite ready to get it reviewed. I want to play it a little bit more, but based on first impressions, it was really cool. I played it and introduced it to 3 others who had never played it before as well. And you, again, saw some of those light bulbs go off when you started to figure out just all of the different options and actions that you can take in the game. It is very approachable and the number of actions is limited, but it does make you feel like you're doing a really cool move and getting a really good benefit every time you do. I don't think there's like a wasted turn in this game, and I think that's why I like it so much. You always are able to kind of figure out and mitigate around a problem, and if nothing else, you're going to be collecting a bunch more stuff that you're going to be able to use on a future turn. So River of Gold, that's what I think the thesis of this one is. You never have a wasted turn in this game, and that's why it's number 2 for me. Finally, at number 1, I think I've made like 3 or 4 TikToks about this game already, so I'll try and shut up about it after today. But my number 1 game for the month of August is a little game called Scout. This is from Oink Games, who are known for having very tight, compartmentalized, and very streamlined box designs here, and no different in the case of Scout. Scout is a card shedding game and kind of like a set building game where you are going to be trying to play down different sets or runs of cards. It could be a 3, 4, 5, or a pair of 9s, or a pair of 4s, whatever. And you are trying to get rid of cards in your hand and beat other people's hands that are currently out on the board so that you can then take those cards for points at the end of each round. What makes Scout, of course, so different, and if you have heard about this game, I think you know kind of the gimmick of it, is once all the cards are dealt out around the table, you are going to pick up your hand, and you do not have the option to move cards around in your hand, to basically set up and group all of the same numbered cards together or put together a really long run. It goes against everything that a card player has been taught. And as a result of that, I was really excited to bring this to my family cottage getaway again, because we're all big traditional card players. People play euchre, people play cribbage, people play bridge. And so just that factor of doing the first thing of looking at your cards and not being able to manipulate them or shift them around at all, it sent people through a loop, and it took some time to get used to. But what came out of it on the other side is that you start to pick away at this game and you start to realize, okay, here are the things that I can do on my turn. I don't always have to make the obvious play and just beat out the card that's in front of me. Sometimes it makes more sense for me to actually take one of the cards that are out on the table in front of me from the current winning hand. It's going to get somebody else a point, but it's also going to let me add that card anywhere into my hand so I can pick the perfect spot and the perfect orientation of that card to be able to set myself up for an even bigger turn where I have the chance to have a really good hand for a long time, thereby, again, making it harder for others to play on top of me. That is, in a nutshell, the kind of core strategy. It's a little bit hard to explain or contextualize, I realize, just if you haven't played this game before, but there's just this certain factor of that discovery again, being able to kind of figure out like, oh yeah, sometimes making the obvious move isn't necessarily the best move. And that's why I really loved Scout. Just being able to play this game, again, starting at the top of the list with people that I love. Who I knew would enjoy that game, and to see them have a really good experience. For me, that is what playing board games is all about, getting to show somebody a cool thing, and then just as importantly, getting to experience that cool thing with others. So that is why Scout has gotten a lot of work already this month. Played it with a ton of different people. It has been a hit every single time we've played, and that is why it is my #1 game from August. So that is going to be it for the month of August. Those were my top 10 games that I played from last month. I think I had a good stretch there where I was like playing games between 7 and 10 days in a row. So it was a really good month. That actually bled through into September. So September is also shaping up to be really good. I think what I'm going to try and do next is dive a little bit deeper into Sentinels and do a little bit more of that comparison between Sentinels, Marvel Champions, and Marvel Legendary. If you are a superhero fan at all, chances are one of these 3 games is probably going to be a hit for you. And it's just all about kind of what each game's strengths are, what each game's weaknesses are, and kind of comparing and contrasting. So I'm hoping to do a video like that for the next one. Until then, this has been Get This Game. Once again, if you can subscribe to my channel, if you liked what you saw, feel free to leave a comment down below, subscribe and turn on the alerts. Follow me on TikTok and Instagram. And more than anything, once again, thanks for playing with me.